Our theme this month is oneness. My topic today is separation costs more than oneness. Separation costs more than oneness. There were several concepts that I learned in graduate business school. I got my MBA from UCLA. That were so profoundly metaphysical that they really just stuck with me. And one of them is this notion of the opportunity cost. There are all these different kind of costs. We have hard costs, we have soft costs, variable costs, all these different kind of costs. But then there's this thing called the opportunity cost, which isn't something that you can necessarily quantify in a dollar amount. But essentially what it says is that for any resource that you have, there are only so many different things that you can do with it. And whatever else it is that you're not doing with it, that's your opportunity cost. So you have an egg, you got one egg, you have scrambled eggs, you're not going to be able to bake a cake. So you're trading the scrambled eggs for the cake. That's your opportunity cost. You're sitting here now on this Sunday morning. You could have been someplace else. Wherever that else is that you are, that's your opportunity cost. So in my class that I'm teaching now in Adventures in Living, just kind of like the fundamentals course, I explained to them in the beginning in September and reminded them last Thursday night that part of my job, I felt, was getting them to the point where they realized that their old ways and their old patterns cost too much. To get them to see what they were trading. To see the joy, the power, the peace, the possibility, the goodness, all of these things that may have eluded them before, clinging on to their identities, clinging on to their perceptions, their ideas or patterns of themselves, to just make it just uncomfortable enough. Developing the witness, where we can witness ourselves, get off of automatic pilot, and to realize we're making choices about how we live our lives and what we do with our energy. And once you become conscious of the fact that you're making choices about it, it becomes a different world. It becomes a different game. Most of us walk around believing we don't have choice. That's the most interesting thing, because there's only one thing in the world you have any control over at all, and that's your thinking. And yet it's the one thing most of us feel we don't have control over. There's an irony in that. The only thing we can control is the one thing we're convinced we can't control. We're busy trying to control everything else, everybody else's mind, the circumstances, whatever. But it's our own mind. It's our own mind. So why did I phrase it that way, that separation costs more than oneness? Because I find that so many people actually want oneness, but they think it costs too much. They want it, but they think it costs too much. It's like, yeah, I want the oneness, but, like my topic last week, what if I don't want to be one with them? Oneness means I'm going to have to change my mind. Oneness means I can't be up on my high holy horse anymore. Oneness means I might have to forgive. Oneness means I might have to let go. Oneness means I might have to let go of something. Oneness means I might have to change my mind. Oneness means I can't be up on my high holy horse anymore. Oneness means I might have to forgive. Oneness means I might have to let go of something. Oneness means I might have to Oneness might mean I have to go there. Oh, God, that's just a lot. You're just asking a lot. I'm kind of comfy right here. I feel safer right here. But you know what? It's not true. Sometimes I really wonder why we call it the comfort zone, because it really isn't all that comfortable. Staying in it certainly isn't. So you ask yourself, what's the choice? What's the choice? If oneness costs too much, does separation cost less? It reminds me of when I was really learning that the truth really was the best option. And I can remember this spirit letter that I got. And it was saying, well, my Reverend daughter, if you don't think that truth will make it better, what will? And if you're not planning to tell the truth, just what exactly are you planning to tell? If the truth costs too much to tell, is there something cheaper? I don't think so, because it's going to wind up costing you just as much. There is a trade-off. We live in this universe where for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. That's how the universe is in this balance. Okay? So your joy goes up, your sorrow goes down. Your sorrow goes up, your joy goes down. Okay? So we're constantly doing this trade thing. I want you to catch what I'm saying. You can't stay in rage and anger and have freedom and joy. It doesn't work that way. You can't have them both. Okay? If you're choosing this, it is at the expense of something else. Everything has an opportunity cost. If I want to stay here, what am I trading for here? You hear me say that everything always exists along a continuum. This is extremely important. All the spiritual qualities we already have, love, joy, peace, power, trust, truth, vitality, wholeness, courage, strength. It's the fundamental spiritual DNA. It's what we already are, and it's just a question of expressing it. So wherever we are living in consciousness, on the inner, there is an outer expression of that. It's like a perfect corollary between where we are in the invisible and how that's showing up in the material world. There isn't health and illness. There's only degrees of health. Feel the difference in that. There's not health and illness. Illness is just when our chi field is resonating low. It's not something else. It's just the health not in its fullest form. So when you get to the point where you are experiencing the vitality, it isn't because you had illness and then you had health. It's that health moves along that continuum to higher and higher and higher expressions of itself. There isn't darkness and then light over here. If you are experiencing physical darkness, it's just where the light isn't shining quite as much. You can't just go from like darkness to light over here. Light comes in and it fills up that space, and there's something that's happening. You can't have the light and the darkness. You're trading. If you flick on the light, you are trading it for the dark room. If you want to stay in the dark room, you are trading it for the light. Whatever else you could have had, that's your cost. I had to grow to understand that the things that I was clinging to as me cost too much. It's like that old saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because you can be right all by your little right self. What do you want? I remember when I used to be stuck in my righteous indignation. There are plenty of reasons for us to be in righteous indignation, particularly right about now. Yep. A lot of reasons. But where is it going to get me? Probably more righteous indignation. There's this irony. Pain pushes until vision pulls. The trade-off again. Pain pushes until vision pulls. When I stay in my righteous indignation, I'm spinning. I'm like a hamster on a wheel, and I'm going over the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It reminds me of one of Wilhelmina's lines, my alter ego, in her poem about why I got to forgive, where she's saying just how many times, overt or sublime, can the same crime be tried in somebody's mind? If you really want movement, you have to dislodge. If you really want movement, there has to be a freshness. You can take action, but if you're taking action from the place of righteous indignation, you're just trading places, that's all. Because you become what you don't forgive. You become what you don't forgive. You're giving back as good as you get. You're judging with the same kind of judgment, and then there's just more of that. There's not a real change. There's not a healing. There's not a transformation. So you have your righteous indignation about what they did, and then now they're pissed off at you, and they have their righteous indignation about what you're doing about their righteous indignation, and then you're just trading off on whose righteous indignation gets to be supreme for that moment. It's like constant retaliation. And there's some places where we have been doing constant retaliation for millennium. We're on the verge of World War III. We've got to get beyond it. So my Bible class that I've been teaching at Agape, I've been commuting there. This week is going to be my 10th week. We're finalizing this now. And we've been doing New Thought Miracles and Parables, and they're working now on the parable of the Good Samaritan. But in the setup of the Good Samaritan, it's about the good neighbor. So in the setup of it, the lawyers are asking Jesus, what are the greatest commandments? And they're expecting him to choose between the 10 commandments or some of the commandments that they're familiar with, but that's not what Jesus said. Jesus says the greatest commandments are these. 1, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart and all of thy soul and all of their might, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. He said these are the 2 greatest commandments. So they're trying to trick him. Like, okay, that's fine. Well, who's my neighbor? And then he goes into this parable. And I'm not going to go all into the parable, but the bottom line of it is that the protagonist, the hero in the story, is a Samaritan who's the enemy, that they're not even supposed to have anything to do with. But it's the enemy that shows the compassion. Okay? This may sound cold, but I got to say it this way to catch what the story is saying there. We normally think of it as the Good Samaritan. But the story is about the Good Samaritan. Catch the difference in that. The good one. Because in our minds, they were bad. The Good Samaritan. That's like saying the good Negro. The good one. Okay? I'm just being real here. That's why it's named that way. Okay? Do not confuse love your neighbor as yourself with the golden rule. Don't confuse that with the golden rule. The golden rule, do unto others as you would do unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Hint, others. Hint, others. I'm not saying that it's not valuable or not something that we should do. What I am saying is that it is not the same thing. The golden rule says, I understand there's a me and there's a you. And there is this thing called a karmic effect. And if I want to make sure that what comes to me is the good stuff that I want to come to me, then that's what I need to put out. That's what that's talking about. When you look at the major religions of the world, they all have these four things in common. They believe that there's some kind of creator in the universe, that there's some inherent relationship between humankind and this creator. Third, that the whole meaning of life is to discover this relationship and to honor it. And last but not least, some kind of karmic law. What goes around comes around. This kind of, you reap what you sow. That you got to really watch what you put out there because it's going to come back to you. They all have that. They may call it karma. They may call it like all these different things, but this idea that things are cyclical, that things come back, that it's not just linear, that what you put out, you're going to get back. So be careful. Be careful about what you put out. Okay? That's the golden rule. Is to be mindful. Don't do anything to anybody else that you don't want coming back to you. It is a rule about behavior. It is a rule about engagement. So these laws that these lawyers were expecting Jesus to speak of, these commandments were all actions. They were all activities. There were specific things to do or to not do. When you look at the 10 Commandments, it comes across as a bunch of thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that. These commandments were given to Moses in the Exodus journey. When the people were in the wilderness, not lost for 40 years, but getting prepared to go into their promised land. This is the story. This sojourn, who knows how many people? Who knows? It says that there were at least 600,000 who weren't Jews with them. The mixed multitude. So they're out here in this desert doing all kind of crazy stuff. So when you look at these 10 commandments, they are laws of code of conduct to stop the drama. See, it actually doesn't say thou shalt not lie. It says thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. It's like, how are you ever going to get the truth if folks are lying about it? Okay. Don't steal. Don't covet your neighbor's. Well, it does in the King James Version, it says ass. They're talking about donkey. But don't covet your neighbor's wife. Or is that? Because there's going to be some drama up in here. Okay? This was a step up from an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay? This was more justice. Because it's like, let's be reasonable here. Okay? An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that's a step up. Okay? From, you steal my goat, I kill you. It's like, is there some kind of evenness here? Okay? And then we step up to the 10 Commandments. It's like another step up here. But these commandments now, these are oneness commandments. These are not activity, action commandments. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy strength and all thy might. This is the agapeo love. This is the oneness love. This is the connection love. This is the saying that everything about you needs to feel more connected to the divine than anything. That your first, most primary identity in the world needs to be this connection. That all of your strength and all of your heart and all of your mind and everything needs to be anchored in this. Can you imagine what a different world it would be if everything about you was anchored in your oneness with the divine? What a different world it would be. And out of that oneness love, out of that agapeo love, and to love your neighbor as yourself, this has got nothing to do with liking them. This has got nothing to do with any of that kind of stuff. To love with the same kind of oneness love. To be so connected to God, to realize that you are one with God, and out of extensi of that, so you are with the so-called other people. That there's no separation between you and God, and there's no separation between you and these other people. We're talking about identity here. We're not just talking about activity. We're not just talking about behavior. We're talking about ways of being in the world. That's what we're talking about here. Out of that, does there come a golden rule? Yes. But we are talking about relationship. Listen to what I am saying. We are talking about relationship. A relationship of oneness. And when you get out of that relationship, it starts to cost too much. Linguistically speaking, the word sin means missing the mark. It's not about behavior. It's not about actions. It means missing the mark in your relationship with the divine. That is linguistically what the word means. When Jesus was dealing with people and they'd get some kind of healing or something, and he would say to them, sometimes go and sin no more. He wasn't talking about behavior as though there was some specific behavior that brought this disease or whatever on you, but to say, get right with God. Get right in your sense of relationship. Because if you don't get right in your sense of relationship, recalibrate yourself and vibe on a different frequency, this, whatever you're having, can come back. Or even worse, even Jesus couldn't heal you to be all healed. Even Jesus couldn't, get in there, recalibrate your heart and your soul and your mind so that that temporary relief that he's giving you could stick. That something had to shift within you. Anything else costs too much. And I am telling you now, we are at the point where the rubber hits the road in this theology. You believe in oneness or you don't. And like I said last week, if you really don't, say so. If you really don't, honor that. If you really don't, then just allow yourself to have the willingness. The willingness. Because then you can get it. Then you can move to it. But if we're sitting on a high horse acting like, oh, I got this, and you don't, then we're too arrogant to humble ourselves to do the work that we need to do to clean our hearts. It's okay. It's okay. If you don't feel like forgiving, that's okay. Are you willing to be forgiving? Sometimes I have to say to myself, I don't know. Are you willing to be willing to be forgiving? Sometimes I don't even know about that. And then I have to go, well, am I willing to be willing to be willing? Well, yeah, I can do that. You start back as far as you got to go and work your way up. Well, I don't know if I could do this, Rev, you know. I don't know if I could do that. That day when I had everybody stand up, and we were just, boom, repeat after me, I am one with Trump, and boom, I am one with Trump. I am one with Clinton, boom. Woo, there was some fallout. They sucked it up like some good soldiers in front of me, and they ran back. This is heavy lifting now. This is heavy lifting now. Because we are not going to have change unless this is the work that's done. And listen to what I'm saying now. This otherness thing and this othering and the oneness thing, this isn't necessarily about the people that you think are diametrically opposed to you, politically, philosophically, theologically. I've heard some of the worst things I've ever heard in my life amongst people that I am politically aligned with. Oh, yeah. The level of demonization, divisiveness, otherness, judgment, fear is off the hook. Nobody's got a monopoly on it. It seems to be an equal opportunity disease running around. Do you get caught up in it? Because I'm telling you, it's hard. It's hard to not go along with it when that's the dominant conversation, particularly amongst your friends or people that you're talking to. It's hard to stop it or to say I'm not down with that page. And I'm not asking you to shut other people up. I'm asking you to speak up for your vision. I'm not telling you to shut anybody up or silence them. What I'm saying is you don't be silenced. You speak your truth. No one and nothing is beyond redemption. You believe in the oneness or you don't. What is this that we're ultimately fighting for? What is it? Some of you were here that day. This was a number of years ago when George W. was president. And I was in the shower on my way to church, and that spirit voice said to me, "You are mad at him for not being everybody's president, but you won't let him be yours." And I had to think about that, because I was very conscious of never saying President Bush. He was Bush, he was George W., but I never said President Bush. And that spirit voice said to me, "You know what? This is a lot like what people do to you. There's so many people who think you don't have the right, or you don't deserve to be a minister or a pastor. And they fail and refuse to acknowledge you as that." And it said, this is no different. That this is an institutional position. He's in it whether you like it or not. And when you fail to acknowledge that, it's no different than when people are denigrating you. So I came to church, and I took a deep breath. Anybody in the room that day? Okay, I took a deep breath, and I said it. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take me to put Trump in president in the same sentence. I'm not lying. I'm not there yet. But where I am is on the oneness. Are you with me? I'm unwavering on that. I'm unwavering. There's no demonization, there's no othering, there's no Because what I know is I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't. There is something about hypocrisy that grates me to my core. Do I always fulfill where I say I want to be? No. I'm not perfect, but I want to be moving in that willing to be. I want to always be moving, so to speak, in that direction. Okay? I said before, and I mean it now, this is going to be safe space. This is going to be safe space here. And I'm just being honest. But it's going to be safe space. We have everybody up in here. We have vegans and carnivores. We've got 12-steppers and club hoppers. We've got Republicans and anarchists. We've got Burning Man and Wicca. And I mean, we've got, like I said, we are making up genders. We have so many different kind of family constructions and pronouns for, hey, because that's the world. We're not going to be just a one kind of church. We're going to be a people kind of church. Okay? So politically, the same thing. We're going to be an everybody kind of church. And we're going to work it out. We're going to work it out. Because we need to listen. We need to listen. Because what I know is everybody is a part of me. Remember when I've been saying for months, hear the pain. Yes? I've been saying, hear the pain. Hear the pain. Don't just demonize. Hear the pain. This was an election of pain. Are we listening? Are we listening? I'm not listening to, quote unquote, the other people. Everybody's a part of me. What is that part of myself that's at Standing Rock? What's that part of myself that's voting red? What's that part of myself that's locked up? What's that part of myself that's addicted? What's that part of myself that's a sage? What's that part of me? And when you're coming from that place, anything else just costs too much. Because whatever love you are not giving, that's love you're not feeling. That is love you're not receiving. You're hiding your own light under a bushel. And I'm going to end on this. So George W.'s mother, Barbara, and I've told this story before, I know. I was channel surfing one day when she was First Lady. This was a while ago. And I remembered the controversy that was up about her being selected as the commencement speaker at the Wellesley College graduation, one of these prep, Ivy League women's schools. And people were, the student body was protesting because they didn't think she was qualified. They didn't think she had, any reason to be the speaker. So I was channel surfing and I happened to catch this. And I listened. And I want to invite everybody, just listen. Just listen to everybody. So she was, this is a summation right now, but she was explaining to the people, in so many words, get a life. That in the final analysis, it won't matter that extra deal, or that extra house, or that extra car. That when you're there on your deathbed, that's not what's foremost on your mind. And when you're there on that deathbed, you're not even concerned about the love you didn't get. The only thing on your mind is the love you didn't give. Oh, and that's so true. I have seen it. On their deathbed, nobody's talking about their mama and what their mama did. And daddy left, and my ex cheated. It ain't that kind of party then. On that deathbed, it's find my sister. Where's my son? Do you know I love you? It's this trying to get it out. Are you with me? And it's like that all along. We're hurt the most, not by what happens to us or the love we don't get, but the love we don't give. And we don't have to put ourselves on a deathbed to give it. And then she ended with this, which I thought was brilliant. And she talked about all the opportunities that are now awaiting women in the world. And just different things, but she didn't say women specifically, she just said opportunities. And then she ended with this. She says, and some of you may choose what I did, to be the spouse of the President of the United States of America. And I wish him well. And I was like, go Barbara Bush. Don't other. Don't other. Let us pray.